A 14-year-old Canadian girl has been sexually assaulted by a Syrian migrant. It was supposed to be a night of innocent fun and giddy excitement, her first high school dance. But for one girl at New Brunswick's Fredericton High School, the night would go on to haunt her well after the last song was played. The young girl's mother, who asked that she and her daughter have their identities protected during this report, reached out to the Rebel.media. She told us that her daughter was approached by two Syrian migrants who are enrolled at the Canadian high school. Both of the migrants attempted to grind with the 14-year-old girl before one of the migrant students came up from behind her and aggressively touched her body, her breasts, before forcing his hand down her pants, touching her vagina from inside her underwear.
There were two boys, but the one boy was the one that was, I guess you could say, successful in his attempt at what he was trying to do to her. She said he did it really fast and aggressively, so she didn't even see it coming.
The mother told me that at first, Fredericton High School belittled reports of the sex assault against her daughter.
The school was contacted, and then I had to go in. The principal wanted to delay it until the Monday, and it was a Friday when I called her, and she said, because she had meetings or something. I said, no, I'm coming in today, and we're gonna discuss this today. So I was quite adamant about it, and she said, okay, well, let me cancel an appointment or something, and you can come in, kind of thing. But it was kind of like she made me feel like it wasn't important.
The girl's mother was told to consider things from the Syrian migrants' perspective, to consider how Western girls' clothing had the potential to create cultural tension.
It's a cultural issue, of course, I was told. And I was also told that by the Fredericton City Police. It's a cultural issue, and they are having a challenging time working with it. There was a comment made about, you can imagine if you're, a Syrian boy who's a teenager, who's an adolescent, going through puberty, coming from a country like that, coming to Canada and seeing how different our culture dresses, male and female, and how, different it is here compared to their country, and their hormones kind of, flowing and all this kind of thing.
The girl's mother informed me that the police were indeed aware of the sex assault and that she had hoped to press charges. However, after detectives' interaction with the young girl, there is now no sign that charges will be pressed.
I filled out the paperwork for the boy to be charged because of what happened, and it just kind of didn't go much from there. She had to go in, my daughter, and she had to do a video statement saying exactly what happened. And then and I actually couldn't go in with her, and I said, well, I'd like to go in with her, and they said no, and so I kind of stood outside the door. And it was interesting, my daughter had mentioned that when they were leaving to come back out to meet me, the detective said to her, what do you think should happen to this boy? Do you think that he should have a criminal record? And, she's 14, she doesn't even really, she doesn't know the extent of a criminal record or what it entails or what it means, She just probably thinks, well, he's going to be in big time shit, you know what I mean? He's going to get in trouble and it's going to be my fault. So it's almost like, it was kind of like that portion of that responsibility was almost put on her conscience. It's almost like it was demeaning to the act that he did to make it feel like she was more responsible for what he did.
The girl's mother then said that she believes that the perpetrator is getting special treatment, as though he is above Canadian law simply because he is a Syrian refugee.
He has to go through the normal legal process that any other Canadian boy would in this situation, and that's all it comes down to.
Do you think if this was a Canadian boy who did this to your little daughter, that he'd have been treated differently?
Oh, absolutely.
According to the young girl's mother, the Syrian migrant student was suspended for just 1 week and is now back at school with her daughter. Meantime, the 14-year-old girl has missed several weeks' worth of school and is now seeing a mental health professional to help her cope with the trauma. What's more, the young girl's mother said that her daughter isn't alone. She told me that there have been several complaints from other girls too. Reports of Syrian boys groping and touching girls' breasts and trying to touch girls' vaginas at previous school dances as well. She also told me that there are much older Syrian students at FHS, and they're permitted to attend school dances, which she describes as unfair to the younger students. But for reasons unclear to her, the issues, despite being well known, are not being reported.
I mean, some of the kids there, you know, they're like between 18 and 20 or 18 to 22 years of age, and my daughter said that. I mean, yes, they do have their own classroom in a different portion of the school, like a different part of the school apparently, but like my daughter said, there's one boy there, you know, she thinks he's probably 22 years old, and he has a great big beard and all this sort of thing, and I mean, he looks older, maybe he just looks older, but I mean, some of them may not even be the age that it says that they are on their birth certificates, because some of them didn't even have proper documentation or birth certificates when they came to this country. And it was known that, you know, these there were Syrian boys that were, you know, trying to get quite physical with the girls on the dance floor, and, you know, kind of coming up behind them and grinding them, and then trying to touch their breasts and trying to touch their vaginas, and completely inappropriate, but none of it was reported.
Now, the rebel media sought to verify the sex assault allegations before presenting this young girl's story to you. And so we followed up with the school. We filed an access to information request. We informed Fredericton High School of our tip and asked that they provide any information regarding the alleged sexual assault in question. We received shy of 12 pages of email transactions between teachers and school administrators, all of which authenticated our source's story. Emails describe the sex assault on school grounds, how the Syrian migrant reached his hands down her underwear, while another Syrian student tried to grind with her before she got away. Emails discussed how other students corroborated her story. Meanwhile, other emails suggest a wider issue, more incidents of inappropriate touching and sexual assault in the school ever since the Syrian students arrived. Now, in light of the ATIP documents, I reached out to school staff and administrators, including the principal and the vice principal. But I never received a response. And so I resent my emails, doubled down on my request for comment, and again, radio silence from the school. However, certain email exchanges between teachers offer some insight as to why they might not have responded. You see, I was interested in how the school was ensuring the safety of their young female students going forward. The school administrators, on the other hand, well, they seemed more interested in protecting the Syrian migrant sex attacker. Teachers outline how the Syrian student in question has to be monitored constantly for safety reasons, but then discuss worries that he will become the target once word of the sex attack gets out. And then this, a bizarre email which seems to suggest that the Syrian student in question is, quote, working hard in class. So I suppose teachers are just to overlook the sex assault on the dance floor because of the better behavior in the classroom. Folks, over the course of the past 8 months, I have presented a dozen reports based on over 3,000 pages of documents covering 5 different Canadian provinces on the topic of Syrian students abusing their Canadian peers. It's happening. There is evidence that we here at the Rebel.media have made publicly available. Every page of every access to information request we have filed is posted in full on our website. And yet, there is a country-wide cone of silence on this subject. Now, I'm a reporter and I'm a commentator too. I've presented my report, and so if you'll indulge me, allow me to offer a short comment on what I make of this matter. In an age where the opinion makers and gatekeepers of the status quo are so obsessed with manufactured narratives of victimhood, it is truly remarkable and repugnant that they, especially those in the mainstream media and the political class, will no doubt treat this 14-year-old girl as they have the victims of Syrian migrants that came before her. They will ignore her real claim, grounded in evidence and corroborated by witnesses, simply because he who fashioned her into a victim is a Syrian migrant. They would rather spare this child, her innocence, her fragile mental health, perhaps even her whole academic year. They would lay all of that on the altar of political correctness, just to ensure that their sacred cow, a policy of as many refugees as soon as possible, is not slaughtered. Canada's Liberal government under Justin Trudeau is so busy virtue signaling to their friends in the international community that they have forgotten the most vulnerable in their own backyard. But we're not going to back down. We haven't forgotten about the little girls and the little boys who are ultimately affected by our government's sloppy Syrian refugee policy. When this little girl cries, we're not going to look the other way. We're going to tell her story and continue to ask the tough questions, no matter how uncomfortable the answers might make us. And we encourage others to start doing the same. For the Rebel.media, I'm Faith Goldie. For all my reports on the Syrian bullies inside Canadian schools, visit schoolyardscandal.com. And if you have a story to tell, feel free to email us at tips@therebel.media.